Hello, hello. Welcome to Building a WISCO-LIFE, where we have studied and listened and learned about real estate and the market in the southeast corner of Wisconsin, Racine, Kenosha, Milwaukee County. Those are the areas that we aim to educate you on in case you are relocating here or you are a resident here and you're curious about the market. Maybe you're looking for a new home. Maybe you're looking to sell your home. Maybe you're looking to invest in property. So we do these quick little blurbs. Sometimes we have nice, like 20-minute talks about things in real estate, but sometimes there's just a question that comes through a client or a friend or someone who's just kind of like, hey, I'm just wondering, could you give me advice on this or that? And it's really not like it's not like we need to, unpick the universe to figure it out. We're really just trying to give clear definitions as to what some of these things are. So, in order to increase our vocabulary when it comes to real estate and to help us feel like we kind of know what's going on, we've got a good pulse as buyers and sellers, we are going to just take a quick look at earnest money. What is earnest money? What is that? Some of you are like, ooh, I know. Some of you are like, yeah, what is earnest money? And so I'm just going to explain to you what earnest money typically is. Okay, so earnest money is a deposit that is made by a buyer to show that they are really interested in purchasing a property. So it's typically paid when the buyer and a seller enter into an accepted offer contract. The purpose of earnest money, in very simple terms, is just to demonstrate to the seller that the buyer is committed to the transaction, and it serves as a way to earnestly signal the buyer, okay, that there is a genuine interest there. So it's earnest money. It can typically vary, but if you're a buyer in a transaction and you just got your offer accepted and you kind of like down your glass of champagne, woohoo, celebrate, the very first thing probably at the top of your priority list is going to be to submit earnest money. And that earnest money is usually going to be about 1 to 3% of the purchase price. It can vary, it can be more. But if you're buying a house for $160,000, your earnest money will typically be about $1,600, and it's held in an escrow account. So it's typically made out to the title company, which the sellers will tell you who they want to use. So you just write your little check out to the title company, and it remains there throughout the course of the transaction until the deal is either completed or it falls through. So let's talk about those two options. So if a transaction goes through successfully, that earnest money, that $1,600, is typically applied towards the buyer's down payment or at closing costs. It's going to be participatory in the already expected funds. Okay, so it's not an extra cost, it is absorbed into what you are already expecting to pay. However, if the deal does not close, and that is usually due to reasons outlined in the contract, so maybe the buyer backs out without a valid reason, the earnest money could be forfeited to the seller as a compensation for taking the property off the market. If the buyer backs out due to contingencies in the contract, like for example, maybe they found issues in the inspection or there was difficulty securing the financing, they may be able to get their earnest money back. It's usually something that can be worked out between the seller and the buyer if it's not a total breach of contract. So in short, to sum it all up, earnest money shows the buyer's commitment, and it protects the seller from taking their property off the market for someone who might not follow through. Who do you make your earnest money check out to? Well, that's typically made out to the title company. Sometimes there's an escrow company, but the listing firm will let you know. The title company or the escrow company acts basically as a neutral third party, and they hold the earnest money in an escrow account until the transaction is complete. So this particular setup ensures that the money is handled impartially, which is what you want. It provides security for both the buyer and the seller. The listing firm or the real estate agent generally doesn't handle or hold the earnest money themselves, because they have a vested interest, obviously, in the transaction, and they might not be considered objective or neutral. So when the earnest money is deposited with the title company, it stays there until the deal is completely finalized. And in that case, it ends up being applied to the buyer's closing costs or their down payment, or if the deal falls through, based on contingencies, like I said, laid out in the contract. If the contract is breached, the title company will usually decide, according to the terms of the agreement, whether the earnest money should go back to the buyer or be forfeited to the seller. So that is the skinny on what is earnest money and when do we pay it and to who do we pay it and how does that apply to my transaction. That's just a quick definition of that.